This is your offstage voice. We confront our experts first with the core of volcanic glass known as obsidian, which comes from Tepe Gara in northern Iraq. Its date is approximately 3000 BC, and its use was for striking off razor-like blades. Such material is also found in Mexico, which may complicate our experts' deductions.
This is going to be very hard to spot. Carl, will you begin on the identifications?
Well, this is not easy, I'll tell you that right now.
It's hard to pin down.
Nor is it anthracite either. It's obsidian. It's an obsidian core from which blades were struck off. And there's any more than that I can't say at the moment. Matt, you're an obsidian expert. What do you think about this?
Well, that could be from a number of places in the world. Could come from Mexico. Could come from the Near East, places like Tepe Gara.
Yeah.
Lake Van is famous for it, too.
Yes, Armenia is a great source of obsidian in old ancient times.
Tepe Gara got it from there, didn't it?
Well, Kai, can you tell anything from the shape and the way it's been handled or worked?
Well, just a core from which blades have been taken, but there's so many parts of the world that they could have done that.
Well, now let's go into a little more. In the first place, it's got one of these faceted striking platforms, which is very curious because that is typical of the Valois or Mousterian culture in the old world. Generally, you find a straight faceted, a straight platform, but on the other hand, there's a flake that's been taken off. There's a flake. There's a flake. On the other hand, there are 4 blades.
Does that help you to spot the continent? Matt says it could be either New World or Old World. Does that kind of flaking technique help you to spot it?
What do you think, Matt?
Well,
how about this step platform?
I would say that that is perhaps more likely to be Old World. And although I've seen cores almost identical to that from the highlands of Mexico, it even from as recent times as the California Indians, you get a very similar technique in knocking off prismatic flakes for knives.
Well, how do you know this isn't from the New World, Matt?
I don't.
Does this lining, these strata help at all?
Well, that's an idea, Kai. There's an impurity in there.
Yes.
There's of course, I might say that obsidian is natural glass, you know. It's a volcanic black glass. And that line business, those imperfections, might help. Does that help any in the New World?
If one were more of a geologist, perhaps, but I doubt even if that would be sufficient to identify the place of origin unless there was some really striking feature.
There's a striking platform.
Yeah. That'll do.
Well, I tell you, this is a bit on the crude side for the later cultures in the Old World, but I think it is. I think it comes from Armenia. But I don't think it was found in Armenia. It might have been found in Iran. It might have been found in Iraq. It could have been found at Nippur, at Tepe Hissar, Tepe Gara, any one of those old sites, because they traded this Armenian obsidian all over the place.
Well, Carl, I think that's remarkable. Well, thanks, gentlemen. And I do think it's remarkable, Matt, that you hit this site, really, Tepe Gara, when you said it could be from Tepe Gara as well as the Valley of Mexico. It actually is. It's from Tepe Gara, and it dates about 3000 B.C. Let's locate this one on the map. Tepe Gara is a site in northern Iraq. One of those sites which was excavated by Dr. Fred Spicer on the University Museum expedition. One of those sites which help us to understand the beginnings and the origin of those great civilizations of the 2 rivers in Mesopotamia. I do think this was a remarkable thing because we put it on here to trip our experts up, because it could have been from so many places in the world. Well, I think now we can move right on to the next object.
Our object this time is from Mexico and is a pottery effigy urn in the form of a seated man. It was found in a tomb in Mexico and is from the Zapata culture, which dates from the 6th to the 11th century A.D.
Now, here's one that's much more distinctive. I think it's your turn to start on identifications, Matt. I think you probably will recognize, in general, where this comes from anyway.
Well, I should say that there's not much doubt that that's from southern Mexico, probably from the state of Oaxaca.
Can you tell us its age, the site, and so on? Can you pin it right down this time?
Well, I could make a guess at that. If it's not from the site of Monte Alban, it is from a site of very similar provenience.
You seem very sure of this. How do you know that? Is it the style of the thing, or
It's the
material?
style.
What peoples were they?
Well, they were
The Zapatec.
the Zapatec. That's what I'm trying to say. They're the Zapatecs.
It looks as if there's been some paint on there.
It may have been covered with red paint at one time. There's red paint on the hands and on the face. This workmanship, this gray-colored clay, and this rather elaborate, realistic workmanship is typical of Zapotecan art. It's, I believe, that is about of the Monte Alban 2 or 3
Yeah.
epoch.
It's not very hard to find.
What's the age of Monte Alban 2 or 3, Matt?
Well, you'll get quite a difference of opinion on that among
Yeah.
experts. I
Yeah.
would say offhand that it would be, roughly speaking, around 800 to 1000 A.D.
Why the hole in the top of his head? Did he have a headache and they operate on him or something?
No, I suspect that he was used as a container.
To contain what, for example?
Now you've got me.
Chicha beer? Or did they have chicha beer in the Zapatec
It wasn't an incense
times?
burner, was it, Matt?
It could be an incense burner.
Very hard
Yes,
to light the
many.
incense unless there's another hole in it. There isn't.
No,
So it must be just a container.
I doubt that it was an incense burner. The incense burners generally have a special form of construction
Yes.
that allows for ventilation, the burning
Yeah.
of copal. They use this gum resin copal.
Where do they find these things? I mean, are they in house sites or graves or tombs or?
They're found in tombs, generally speaking, stone-lined tombs that generally have narrow entrances, and in many cases, these tombs, which are rectangular in shape, have steps leading down into them, and they have niches in the wall in which images of this type are placed.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. You certainly have got that one without any question of doubt at all. It is Zapatec, and it comes from Oaxaca, and you have pinned it down to at least as far as we can see. We've got the same dates on our catalog cards, Matt, 6th to the 11th century. And it is from Monte Alban, and you said Monte Alban 2 or 3. Now let's locate this one on the map. Oaxaca in Mexico, Middle American, one of the early Middle American cultures. And I think it's very interesting that this is one of those several advanced cultures of Middle America and South America which precede the more famous Aztec and Inca cultures, things which make it possible for us to see some depth and time and growth to these high cultures of Middle America. Wasn't there a famous treasure found at Monte Alban, Matt?
Yes, that was the find made in the famous Tomb 7 at Monte Alban by Dr. Alfonso Caso.
Was this metalwork as well as pottery and
It
so
was
on?
a great deal of gold, some copper specimens, a lot of very elaborate carved bone pieces, as well as a number of artistic ceramic examples.
Thank you. I think we can move right on to our next object now.
We are taken this time to the Far East, Japan to be exact. Our object is a ceremonial quiver used by the Ainu people of that country in the late 19th century.
Here's one that's going to be much more difficult, I feel sure. Kai, it's your turn, I believe, to start this out. Any idea what it is?
It seems to be a quiver, I think, from the shape of it. It's long and thin, and the decoration looks like Formosa or the Philippines or Borneo, that general area, the islands.
Yeah, well, it's made of wood to begin with, and let's see what kind of wood it is. It looks like some kind of pine, you see. You see the back
Yes,
there,
it's a
Kai?
very light wood.
So you wouldn't find pine in Borneo, I don't believe, would you?
Yes, you do.
Do you?
Mountains, yes.
Well, it looks to
Mountains
me
up
more like
14,000 feet.
Formosa. There's a lot of pine in Formosa. You wouldn't have to get up very high to get pine there.
And the silver looks like the Chinese silver used in Formosa, too.
Yeah.
What about that design?
It's a modified Chinese cash coin design.
That'd be
Then-
more likely to be Formosa, too,
Yes,
wouldn't it,
that's
Kai?
what made me think of it.
Yeah, well, now let's see. Is it Tayala, Bunun, which one of those tribes? Can you
I don't know. the
figure
tribe
which
of
tribe
Formosa.
it is? I think it's Formosa, and I think it's Tayal.
Taya is a tribe in Formosa?
Yes, it's one of the northernmost tribes.
Why do you spot that tribe particularly?
Because I think they had more contact with the Chinese than most of the others.
That would account for the design, you think?
Well, that's what I think, but that's just a guess. You anything to say about this, Matt?
I would say that it's Formosa rather than Borneo because I've never seen a flat quiver of that type from the island of Borneo.
What would you say about the age?
Well, I should say it's 19th century.
Fairly recent, because the wood's in good condition, and it,
Yeah. Wouldn't you say 19th century, Kai?
I guess so, 19th, early 20th.
Yeah.
So you all agree on Formosa, a quiver, about 19th century. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Well, I was afraid this was going to be more difficult. It actually is not Formosa at all, it's Ainu. And I thought sure that design would give it away to you. That's rather typical, that curvilinear design. But it isn't Ainu quiver. The date is right, the 19th century. And there really isn't much close connection between Formosa and Ainu. It's a different culture, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but I think the designs would be very similar because they come from the same source.
You think Chinese or Japanese influence?
Yes.
I see.
Going both directions.
Let's locate this one on the map now. The Ainu are people who live in northern Japan, Sakhalin and Yezo in northern Japan, and out on the Kuril Islands, stretching out toward Kamchatka. These people, of course, are very interesting to the anthropologists because they are a Caucasoid type of people who are considered to be very primitive or very ancient in Japan. The Japanese took the islands over from Japan, from the Ainu. Well, I think it's time now to move on to our next museum curiosity.
This ominous-looking wooden mask is the work of the Bauli people of the Ivory Coast of West Africa. It represents a god and was worn in the religious dances of a secret society. Its date, late 19th century.
Here's another very distinctive piece. I think it's your turn, Carl, to start this out, isn't it?
I think it is. Well, if I get as close on this as Formosa to northern Japan, I'll be doing well this time, I'm afraid. This is obviously a mask made of wood with tribal scarification shown in here, and the whites of their eyes are well within shooting distance, and some pair of horns on it. Now, I know it's from Africa. Don't you think so, Matt?
Yeah, there's no doubt that it's from Africa.
After all, everybody sees these things nowadays. They're very popular.
You can tell what tribe, too. It's the Guro tribe. The way you tell is by this way of arranging the hair in half circles and by the horns. The Guro people generally did rather small, narrow masks with this same high brow and the dip here. But this one wasn't made to be worn. There are no holes for the eyes or the mouth. It was made to be hung in the larger one of the secret societies.
Well, now, where are the Guro? Where's the Guro, Kai? That's not very...
The Ivory Coast, the northern part of the Ivory Coast.
You mean in one of the initiation societies where they initiate the young boys,
yes,
or one of the societies that are higher up for specialists?
Well, the societies for the initiation and for the death ceremonies.
Yeah.
And, the next tribe is the Baule, who make masks almost the same, except the Baule have a pointed beard, and this is a round beard, and the Baule don't have this circle here, so it must be Guro.
Well, that's certainly getting you down to refined identification, Kai. You think it's the which one did you say?
The Guro tribe
The
of the Ivory
Guro
Coast.
tribe.
Yes.
Ivory Coast. What about the time?
Fairly recent, within the past 50 years, I should think.
Mm-hmm. They're still making them?
They're still making them, but not as well as this, and that if it were any older, it wouldn't be as well preserved because the tropic climate rots things about it.
Another thing, too, you see, it's cracked a little bit, and that cracking, I think, is due not to handling, but the fact that this wood checks when it comes out of that moist climate.
Well, just a dry...
They used them. The Africans had iron tools, well developed, and they would rough it out with an adze. There's still some adze marks here.
Yes.
And then they would use rough leaves to sandpaper with, and finally they would smoke it to get the black coloring and oil it with palm oil. It was a very elaborate process. The African Negro sculptors are very fine artists.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That one is very close identification, too. You're really right on. Actually, it's from the Bauli people, Kai. You still think it isn't,
I'll explain why it couldn't. The Baule are next door, but the label must be wrong. Because
you think a refined identification like that beard alone could determine the tribe?
Not only the beard, but the way the hair is done.
We'll have to fight that out in museum catalog cards, then.
Yes.
Let's locate this one on the map. It's West Africa, the Ivory Coast, just around the bend to the north. on the west coast of Africa. Now, while our experts take time out for a breather, I think we'll have time for an announcement of interest to all of us.
The object we're looking at now is part of one of the greatest treasures ever found in this hemisphere. It's a gold breastplate, thought to be a burial piece, found near Ayapel in the South American country of Colombia. Its exact date has not been determined, but it is known to antedate the coming of the Europeans to America.
Now, here's something in solid gold. I think it's Matt's turn to begin the identification, and the problem is going to be, where is it from, precisely?
Gosh, it makes you feel like walking around Fort Knox, Matt.
Well, it's obvious what it is. It's a breastplate, and it's from the Central Middle American region. It could be Colombia or Panama. It's more, this type of mammiform boss is much more typical of Colombia than it is of Panama, however. What do you think?
Was it hung this way through the...
Yeah, which side is up, Matt?
This side is up.
Yes.
The
Was it
two
hung around the neck
holes,
by
the perforations are put where the center of gravity will be lower, and you can always tell that it's hung from the direction by the holes.
Well, Matt, that wasn't necessarily worn by a woman, was it?
Not necessarily.
In other words, a man could put on a sort of a female impersonation with that thing.
In fact, it's highly probable that it was worn by a man,
Yes, well, why they attempt to make him look like a female?
because very often these important personages were looked upon as deities in the flesh,
Yeah.
and they sometimes personified the female aspect as well as the male as a god.
I see.
And
Well, where are these things found, Matt? I mean, how do you find them?
they're found in burial tombs.
Found right on the skeletons?
They're found on the skeletons, although as a rule in this area there isn't very much remaining of the actual bones or human remains.
Was the gold
But
local, or did it have to be imported from some area nearby?
The gold was local. In Panama and in northwestern Colombia, great many streams have alluvial gold in small quantities, and by using a great deal of patience and a lot of men, they were able to obtain all the gold locally that they needed.
Matt, could you pin this down and say it's Quimbaya or Chibcha or any other one group like that?
I should say that it was Quimbaya.
Yeah.
Where would that place it?
That'd place it on the upper Magdalena River in Colombia.
What makes you say that? Is it a
Well,
special type, or is it the kind of thing, or the kind of decoration that does it?
It's the kind of decoration. It's very difficult to pin these things down too specifically because they were traded from one
Yeah.
place to another within a limited region of Panama and Colombia. But I think the center of manufacture of this particular type
Yes.
was in the
Speaking of
upper
manufacture,
Magdalena.
was the gold melted, or was it just hammered out from the stone tools?
It was cast.
It was melted and
It
cast.
was
they-
cast and embossed. It was a combination
Yeah.
process in the...
They had the Ser Perdue method.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Matt, you've again pinned this thing right straight down into exactly the right spot. It is from Colombia. It's from Ayapel. Do you remember that great cache of gold that was found there early part of this century? One of the great treasures ever found?
Yes, I do.
That's where many of our collection, our gold collections come from, or the gold objects in the University Museum come from that place. Ayapel in Colombia, northwestern South America. I think it's interesting that this is exactly the kind of gold which financed the great power of Spain and financed the wars in the Low Countries, the kind of gold the British grabbed off from the Spanish. Isn't that right?
Exactly. That was the great incentive for the 16th century exploration in this country.
There's supposed to be a lot of that gold still left in South America. It's being found all the time in graves and caches and so on.
With mine detectors, I suppose.
You can't with a mine detector, can you? Because you only detect iron that way, not gold.
Mine detectors don't work very well because they've been tried extensively in these gold-bearing regions of Middle America.
Good thing for the archaeologists, I say.
We're all delighted that that's the case.
Right. Well, let's move on to the next puzzler for our experts now.
the world is that? It's a wooden dish from the Philippine Islands which was made by the Ifugao people of northern Luzon. The dish is in the form of an animal and was made and used about some 50 years ago.
Now, here's a little thing that may be very difficult also. Kai, I think it's your turn to begin with this.
Terrible thing.
Container, fairly light tropic wood that's stained somewhat. Used to be a dog of some kind.
Now, how would you
this
ever
is
recognize that as a
characteristic.
dog, Kai? That looks like a pig or something like that.
The tail, well, there isn't much of a tail. It's not a pig.
It's got sort of a clap tail.
This way of
diabolical dog.
this way of making it so there's a cross to the bottom.
Really
makes me
Christian
think-
influence?
No, just the way it's made. It makes you think it's from the Philippines and probably the Kalinga tribe, who are very noted for their woodwork. They make all their eating vessels and things of wood.
Where are the
What do you think,
Kalinga?
Matt?
In the I'll admit it now as I remember it. in
So those are the people that Ray Barton studied.
That's right. I'm inclined to think that that's from the general region of the Philippine Islands. I wouldn't dare place it as to the precise tribe, but it...
I know the Kalinga do find woodwork, just a guess.
You
And
don't
they-
find any cross-eyed dogs in the New World, do you?
very
Well,
seldom.
gentlemen,
That couldn't have been one of those raccoons they had down in Nicaragua, could it?
Well, that would do for one, but I doubt very much that that's
Yeah.
where this one
Kind of
came.
like my totem animal, a raccoon.
well, you're absolutely right, gentlemen. Thanks a lot. You got this one right away. You're only slightly off, Kai. It actually does come from the Philippines, as you and Matt agreed, but it comes from the Ifugao of northern Luzon rather than from Mindanao. This is, to locate this on the map, it's one of those primitive tribes in northern Luzon, Ifugao, who go along with the Bontoc and the Igoroti and so on. It's curious that there should be, remaining in northern Philippines, these very primitive tribes after all these hundreds of years of contact with Western civilization, but they are there. Now I think we can move on to our next mystery.
The pottery figurine of a dog with which we are confronting our experts this time was made in northern Iraq during the Assyrian period. Its time of origin is placed in the 9th or 8th century B.C.
Now here's a simple little thing that may really throw you. Carl, I think it's your turn, isn't
I
it?
consider myself thrown already.
Well, not badly today, I don't think.
Well, it's made of clay. It's a figurine, and I don't know whether it's a dog or what it is. It looks to me more like a fat-tailed sheep with half of the fat removed. I just don't know. What do you think, Matt?
It looks
It
to
has
me
no
like
sheep's ears,
looks
though.
to me like a pig. The way his ears flap down is much more like a pig than a sheep. Slightly lean and long-legged pig, to be true.
Not the modern streamlined pig,
No.
on terramycin, you mean?
I would venture a start on this by saying that it pretty certainly is not New World in provenience.
Yeah.
The clay is very yellow, yes.
It's
Would you
another
spot it?
example that the more simple a thing is,
It
the
looks
more
Near Eastern to me, but I don't
complex
really know
it is
exactly.
to figure it out.
Well, it's either got to be... You will eliminate China?
Yes.
You eliminate the Far East completely?
Yes.
Okay, now that we've eliminated the New World and the Far East, that leaves us, I should say, the Mediterranean region and the Near East. So it's got to come from Spain, and I don't think it does, or Italy, or possibly Crete. I'm pretty sure it isn't Egypt.
Well, gentlemen, I'm afraid our time is about up.
I'll say Palestine.
Well, that's pretty close, Carl. Actually, it's a pottery figurine of a dog from northern Iraq, the Syrian period, about the 9th and 8th century B.C.
I was getting there.
You were very close, as a matter of fact. Let's locate this one on the map now. In northern Iraq, much like the piece we had from Tepe Gara, I think this actually comes from Tel Bila, of the Assyrian period. Several centuries or millennia later than the other piece we had from northern Iraq earlier on the program. Also one of the University Museum expeditions. Well, I think our panel has done exceptionally well today, even on that awfully difficult Obsidian piece. To spot it at Tepe Gara was really quite remarkable. And Matt has spotted his Middle American things right on the head. We're very grateful to him. Now I'd like to take a moment out to thank our panel, Carleton Coon, and Matthew Sterling, and Schuyler Cammann. We really enjoyed bringing this to you, and we hope you like it. And we hope that you will be back again next week when it's time for What in the World. Thank you, and good afternoon.